Hi, I'm Phil Pelucha from Billionaires in Boxes, and you are set to watch or listen to The Heart of the Trial. Fantastic interviews, incredible insights. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Turner, and welcome to a podcast delving into the personal narratives within the clinical research industry. Through candid interviews, we'll learn about the personal journeys and motivations of individuals who have chosen this profession, what I like to call their why. This podcast is not just for industry insiders. It's for everyone curious about the human side of healthcare. Beyond the industry's negative reputation, we'll shed light on the dedicated professionals behind clinical trials. Join us as we uncover the heart and passion of those working tirelessly behind the scenes in clinical research. Welcome to Heart of the Trial.
Hi, I'm Phil Pelucha from Billionaires in Boxes, and you are not tuned into the wrong show. I am today the guest host. Is that a thing? On Heart of the Trial. Suzanne, we've reversed the roles today. Usually the host for Heart of the Trial. You are going to be today's guest. Welcome to your own show.
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate you taking the time.
Good to be here, right? And your own show.
It is. That's very exciting.
Nice. Well, look, I wanted to take the opportunity to do this for a few reasons. Number one, I want to make sure that when people are tuning into this show that they know exactly kind of what to expect and what to expect from your series and the kind of people you're going to be talking to, because I know you've got a lot of exciting interviews lined up, so I'm excited for you about that. But number two, the thing, and I know this all too well, being the host, your job is to extract golden nuggets from the guest, right? And I want to make sure that our audience also get the time to understand who you are, what it is you do, you know, what it is that motivated you to do what it is that you do and all that exciting stuff.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm excited to tell you all about it.
Good. I'm glad. Okay, well, let's start in the most obvious place. So, Heart of the Trial. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to the listener?
So, to me, a Heart of the Trial is my way of trying to bring positivity into the pharmaceutical industry. I really feel that whenever it's brought up in media or talking with individuals, there's such a negative take on it, which, of course, it's valid, but they never talk about the positive side of it, that behind the scenes of clinical trials are thousands and thousands of individuals just like myself who are running clinical trials, and we do care. We have a lot of heart and passion for what we do, and I want to show that to the public. And I also think it's a great opportunity because even those of us in clinical trials, we understand our expertise, right? What we're an expert in, and sometimes understanding the other roles and what they bring to it is difficult, or we miss that. So having an opportunity to hear from different individuals within the industry, what their part of it is, why they do this, what their why is and what keeps them going, because you really can't last in this industry if you don't have that passion. And most people you talk to are going to have some reason. They have some connection, a family member who's gone through a clinical trial, or they've just seen the results from it. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to connect as peers, and also for the everyday individual to see the positive side behind it, that even if maybe some individuals at the top who are making all the money don't care as much, that there are tons of us who care so much, that we're saving lives, making lives better. So that's what I'm hoping it comes across through my podcast.
Love that. So look, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was going to ask, is this podcast and TV show specifically to speak to people within the industry, or are you kind of hoping to appeal to people who are outside of the sector as well?
Yeah, no, I really feel like this is a podcast for everyone. I think peers can learn from each other. Individuals who might be interested in entering the industry can learn about the different roles, because there are so many different roles and directions you can go. And this is not the kind of these positions are not usually the things that are talked about in school when they're talking about career day and what are you going to do. There's no like, oh, let's go be a trial master file specialist. Let's go be a data manager. And so I think that they can really benefit from it. And then that, like I said, the everyday person, that they can start to understand how clinical trials work and maybe why things are the way they are and have some understanding of that.
Well, look, let's take it right back to the very beginning then, if we can, because as you just rightly said, it's not the kind of thing that at 14, 15 years old, when you're choosing your exam options, you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do TMF. So how is it that you found the industry, that the industry found you? Kind of talk us through that journey a little bit.
So yeah, I actually came into it very kind of accidentally, which I think is something the listeners are going to find as a trend with people that they talk to. And for me, I was in a completely different industry. I was a travel agent. I was making very little money. I had to move back in with my parents. It was bad. So I decided to go back to school, get a degree. And then at the time, I was dating this guy whose friend worked at a CRO, which is a clinical research organization. So a lot of these sponsors, pharmaceutical companies hire these companies to actually run their trials. Right. And he's like, oh, they're always hiring in document management. They're always hiring. It's just pushing paper. And I'm like, okay, so they don't require experience. So I interviewed, I got the position, and where that company is located is in the Kansas City area. And, I'm from a small town in the middle of Kansas. So I was taking a huge leap of faith to move up there, take this job. Right. And I did it. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I like to say the big, scary decisions are the best ones I've made. And, as one of the managers told me at one point, I took to it like fish in water. It was such a good fit, managing the documents for the trial. But it also made me realize that friend had no idea what actually went into TMF and how important it is and how much more than paper pushing it was, because I did start when it was full paper TMFs. We had giant rooms of paper everywhere. Now, of course, it's 98% electronic, which is fantastic. But so yeah, I got in it and I just started, learning everything I could, connecting the dots and moving my way up. And by the time I left that company, I was a manager in the department.
So I suspect that anybody in the industry already knows what TMF is, at least. Maybe not like your friend. They might not know it in exactly the detail. Yes. But in layman's terms, for anybody that's listening who isn't in the industry, what is TMF?
Yes, thank you for asking. So TMF stands for Trial Master File. And a Trial Master File, the best way I've found to explain it is that the regulatory bodies around the world require the sponsor, who's usually a pharmaceutical company, to maintain a collection of records that documents the entire process of the study from start to end, everything that's happening. And that collection of records is called the Trial Master File. And it's extremely important because if all of the work that the other team members put in, if we have a saying in the industry, in the TMF industry anyway, that if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. So if they put all that work in and they don't have the documentation, it could be the downfall to the trial. They could have the most successful drug, device, whatever out there, and that could be their downfall, because when they're ready to submit it for approval, that's what the regulatory bodies are coming to inspect, is their Trial Master File.
That makes a lot of sense. In fact, for somebody who's not in the industry at all, it reminds me a lot. I was trying to remember the name of the legal precedent. I think it's Briggs versus Maryland, but I might be wrong. I'm going to find out. But essentially, I like, if anyone like me is an avid crime documentary fan, I love watching crime documentaries. I've now seen quite a lot of convictions overturned and quite a lot of convictions that weren't able to go through court because they didn't collate the data properly. All the evidence wasn't in one place. And that particular precedent I was just talking about is actually where the prosecution hid some of the data that would have been beneficial for the defense teams. And that's happened quite a lot. So people are now being released as a result of that because they kind of kept the data that they wanted and hid the rest. So when you're talking through it, that's one I'm picturing. I'm picturing that in order to have a safe and thorough conviction in a criminal case or win the case from a defense standpoint, you need to be able to collate all of that data and to be able to display it in a way that somebody like the 12 men and women of a jury are going to be able to understand it by looking at it and saying, okay, there's a lot that's happened here.
Yes.
But who's recording it? What does it mean? Where's
it? Exactly. I really like to think of it as a puzzle, like all the different areas of the trial, data management, safety, the ClinOps team, like all those are little puzzle pieces. And for the trial master file, I'm a consultant in it, so that's my area of expertise. Like my job is to make sure that all those puzzle pieces are being collected and put in the order they're supposed to be to make this beautiful picture at the end. And then once it's all beautiful, I can put that paste on it to lock it in and make sure like now this picture is not gonna move. That's how I like to think of it. So, and that's one of the reasons also that like I felt like someone in my role having a podcast like this was actually kind of perfect because everything comes back to the trial master file in the end. So as I'm talking to all these different individuals in their roles, like all the work they're doing, that documentation comes back into the trial master file. So
do you feel like this is a good way of not just you learning about other people's roles within the industry, but about them learning about yours too? Because do you think that's still the situation? I think you said it was your former boyfriend's friend or roommate that was working in the industry. Is there still that misconception around what it is that each of the roles do you think?
So, I think it's gotten better. Like it's, in the past, TMF honestly was just lowest priority to individuals because they were so busy in their day-to-day work and so overwhelmed and so overworked and trying to do their thing. The last thing they were thinking is get that document to the TMF. I really feel So, okay, to kind of backtrack, what happened from that is, and this is really important, is that even if sponsors are outsourcing their trials to like a CRO to run that trial, according to the regulatory bodies, the sponsor is still 100% responsible for that trial, which means they need to have oversight. So what happened is, especially as it transitioned into these electronic TMFs. So it went from paper into electronic TMFs. There started being a lot of findings against the sponsors for lack of sponsor oversight. That started to happen. It was a trend for years. They were just being nailed with this. And so what I noticed is that's when over the last 4 or 5 years or so, sponsors are starting to bring their TMFs in-house more. Right. And because they're bringing them in-house more, they're giving them more attention because they're putting their time and their money and their effort into this, right? And so they're starting to really see the importance. And that's where, again, I'm kind of lucky as a consultant because that's when sponsors are coming to individuals like me because they need someone to help them ensure they have the right processes in place and, that it's running efficiently and smoothly. And so, so there used to be honestly kind of a really bad stigma, like TMF individuals, we had to fight. And now it's becoming better. It's still not all the way there, but, I can tell you such a relief as a TMF person when we're working with a client that truly understands and respects what the TMF is. And so, yes, I am hoping that helps bring an understanding to others too, because again, like it breaks my heart when I think of these individuals working 60, 80-hour weeks to do all this work and to know that just because documentation's not getting in, it could impact that it's like a waste of time, right? So, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask actually, so this is a two-part question. So the first one is, does it ever feel like it's a bit of an us and them situation? Because as you were describing that, it almost feels like between the sponsor and the CRO, it's like they have to give you that data, but they're so busy doing the trials that they just want to get on with it. They're not even thinking about the data. Meanwhile, the sponsors have now recognized the importance of that. Does it ever feel a bit like you're in the middle of that them versus us kind of situation?
Yeah, it can happen. Like I said, it's gotten better, but when I was at the CRO, I was on the other side of it. So it really brings me a perspective that helped the sponsors, because when they're getting that pushback, I can explain to them, this is why you're getting that pushback, because the CRO is still trying to protect themselves also. And so, yes, the nice thing though is just, based on my experience and, resources, a key thing is, knowing where to go for your resources, because may not always have the answers, but if you can go to your resources and find that documentation to back it up, that's the key. And that's why, I love helping these sponsors, because maybe they're getting that pushback and we can say, okay, well, let's find another workaround, or here's the regulatory guidance as to why we're asking that. But yeah, there are times where it can become a little tense.
This might be a blunt question, but if a sponsor doesn't have a good TMF or doesn't have a TMF, what does that potentially look like? The word you used before was it could be a waste of time. Does that mean that they could be investing all this money into trials and it just isn't allowed to go anywhere because they have the right documentation? Paint me a picture.
Yeah, pretty much. So you kind of have one of two situations. They rather go ahead and submit their, what's called an NDA, which is a new drug application. And if they're going to submit that, they feel like this was a successful trial. They'll know by time they're getting to that point, this is successful. We want it to be approved. So they will submit that to the regulatory body. And they know as soon as they do that, they're on a clock. That regulatory body is going to be showing up. So if they left their TMF to the lowest priority, it doesn't exist, or it's an absolute mess, then they go into scrambling panic mode, and it's pulling in experts and teams to try to put that together.
Right.
The other situation is if they have one and they perhaps didn't ensure it was to the level it should be, and those inspectors do show up, and that's where they're going to have a lot of issues. They're going to one of the biggest things the individuals in the industry are scared of are what's called the 483 from the FDA. If you get a 483, that's bad. That's really, really bad. And the FDA actually records those. You can go on and see companies and all that they looked at where they logged these, and they actually trend them too. What were the trends of them? So that's their goal, is always to avoid those findings, because that can give them a failure and non-approval for whatever it is. So it's so important that they have healthy, inspection-ready TMFs really at any time, because it's not just when they submit that NDA. I mean, if they submit it, they know they're on the clock, but really the FDA can show up. They could knock on their door right now without any notice and show up. The same thing with the other regulatory bodies around the world. Right. I'm kind of referring to the FDA as the US-based one, but yeah, they can show up anytime and they can look at anything they want. They can tell you, I'm showing up on this date to look at study X, and they go, you know what? I want to look at study Y actually. So
it's kind of like being audited, isn't it, as a business? At any point they can just say, right, we're coming in, are you ready? It's like, no.
Exactly. My brother, it's funny because my brother's a firefighter, and when I was describing the kind of things I do, because I'll go in and I'll find issues and I'll say, these are your issues, and he's like, so you're the quality person always causing us pain, and I'm like, it's pain, but it's necessary. Yeah.
I mean, it's a difference between something being very successful and being shut down. It's a very important role.
Exactly.
Okay. I love that. So as far as the show is concerned, then, so obviously you're going to be airing on the network. Really excited about that.
Yes.
So you're on the TV and podcast network. So reaches 50 million homes, 40 different countries, plus. I'm excited for you. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm interested to learn a bit more about the kind of guests that you're going to be bringing on then, and the sort of conversations that you want to be having with them. Because whilst I appreciate there is the better understanding of each other's roles and just kind of celebrating those successes, but who is it specifically, role wise, that you're wanting to talk to? What is it that you're hoping to kind of talk to them about?
Yeah, I'm really hoping to be able to bring on a variety of individuals within the industry, kind of from all sides, but specifically the ones who work with sponsors who are, experts in their field, and they can describe what it is they do. And hopefully we can connect on that importance of their role in connecting to the TMF and how we support each other. And again, their why of the positivity this can bring. And I'm hoping that it helps them too, right? Because it's going to continue to shed light on these individuals and their expertise. And hopefully that's appealing to everyone.
I like that. I mean, I think we're not going to go down the rabbit hole with this, but I think it's also going to be interesting I'm a layperson. I don't work in this industry. I don't know this industry at all. But I found it interesting because I think over the past few years, and COVID has definitely made this worse, there has been a lot of suspicion around the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
And it is almost, I appreciate you saying all these documents are readily available. I mean, what was it, the 483 or something? Okay, so all of these documents are available. I think the problem is for the layperson, we don't even know what that means, or if we were to find it, what does that mean to us? And that's where I think there has been a lot of mistrust with it of the industry, because whilst it is very transparent, it doesn't feel it. It feels a bit like there is a drug in a pharmacy. I have no idea what's in it, but it's been approved by people I don't know, telling me it's safe until they remove it a while later and say, oh, no, it wasn't. So how have you seen that shift change from the time that you've been working in the industry to, let's say, the post-COVID market?
Oh my gosh. I honestly, sadly, I feel like it's gotten worse. I feel like it just continuously gets worse because individuals within the industry make decisions that really negatively impact the everyday person, right? And these are very real things, very real problems, where medicines they can't afford, or buying up all the companies that may make their drug, and I think that if I'm hoping to help bring some understanding to the everyday individual, a little bit of behind the scenes and why that kind of happens. Like as an example, costing's ridiculous. We can all agree to that. However, something that the everyday individual doesn't really think of because they have no idea is that when a company decides to come up with a drug or device or whatever, right, they're going to get a patent on it. And that patent could be valid for, 8, 10, 12 years, something like that. So from the time they get that patent, they have to run their clinical trial, prove it's successful, put it out on the market, and make money on it. If an average trial takes average phase 3, which we could always get to in different episodes that there are different phases, but phase 3 is a very large, probably worldwide, lots and lots of sites, so very large study, could take 5 years easily to complete. And this is not their only study, right? They could have 5 or 6 studies going on, and they do all of them, and they're spending millions of dollars on every single one of these studies. And then one of them actually is successful and can get approved. But now they've used up 5 to 7 years of their patent. So they have 5 years before that patent's up to make the money, not just on that one, but on all 6 or 7 or whatever, before they're legally required to release it. And that's then when you get generics, the generic brands. So it's like, is it a stinky situation? And do they take probably way too much advantage of it? Yes. But when you have that little bit of understanding in the background that they have to make all these millions back in this short time, it does kind of make a little sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think, even that's just interesting. I love the behind the scenes idea. I think that's great. Having lived for a lot of my life in the UK, I've come from a place with subsidized health. So, we have a universal healthcare system. So as a result, I think when I left the UK, anybody in the comments might want to correct me on this, but when I left the UK, it was about £9, which is about 11 or 12 US dollars for a prescription. And that prescription can have multiple things on it. It can have 1 5-day course of antibiotics, or it can have an entire 3 months worth of insulin for a diabetes patient. Or so, when you see and hear things, particularly in the US market, I'm picking on the US a little bit, But, when you hear people saying, I haven't been able to afford my EpiPen for the past however many months.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the UK, you can go to your doctor and pick it up for $12 on prescription for 3 months. It is incredible. But again, I've always said about that, as far as the universal healthcare is concerned, it's getting paid out of tax. So just because you don't see the bill doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, that is crazy to think of, though. At least you have that access. But yeah, it's like I said, there's a lot of reasons for people to see the negatives, but I'm hoping that we can at least show some of the positives. I try to be a very positive person and show the silver linings to situations. So it's such a real situation that hurts a lot of people, but I'm hoping they can see the good things and how the individuals as part of this are helping people too.
I was going to say, I think that there's the really important thing for me, other than just the behind the scenes thing, is going to be these guests that you bring on.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for them to share their experience and celebrate their successes and talk about how they feel about the industry. Pros and cons. I mean, it's a safe space, but I think from an audience perspective, it's actually going to be really nice because there are a lot of people who've gone into this for the right reasons. Like I said, as an industry that particularly at the moment has a reputation of almost, can it be trusted? How, I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want to get sued, but
I know,
people locking away files for 55 years saying, don't look at our research and stuff. It does create an air of uncertainty when people make decisions. So knowing that there are great people like you in the industry that are working towards the betterment and the improvement of people's lives, that makes a big difference. And it's fascinating to see all of the different stages that go into this. I mean, it
really is. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, even through our work together, we've had conversations. We've been doing consulting sessions, and my mind's blown. I'm like, I had no idea this stuff even existed.
Yeah.
So I really like that, and I love the fact that you're appealing to both, because there is a place definitely for an industry specific podcast. There is also a place for a layman's person's podcast to explain what it is the industry does. But by combining the two, you're giving a very positive platform to people to come and share their stories, share their successes.
Yes.
But you're also giving people the opportunity to listen in and have a better understanding. It's weird. We've only had a very short episode today, and I think, like me, there are lots of people that are already learning things about the industry that we didn't know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And, all those commercials that you see on TV about these drugs, a lot of people probably ignore them now, but every time they come on, I'm like zoning in. I'm like, who's that sponsor? I'm going to look this up. I'm going to see what I can find out about it, because it amazes me too and I'm kind of hoping with our guests, we'll find out some of the cool things they've worked on within confidentiality realm, of course. But like hearing some of the things that you don't think of, because I think most people, when they think of, the pharmaceutical, they're literally thinking of oral meds. That's like the number one they think of, but it's way beyond that. Like at one point I was on a study where it was actually a dental study, and they were like testing a new filling type. Yeah. Like there's such a wide variety. And so it's, I think it's going to be really cool to be able to let everyone kind of hear these different stories and experiences and the behind the scenes of how this all ends up connecting.
Well, I'm fascinated to see how it does all connect. I mean, I'm fascinated by medtech, so I love the idea that medtech has been emerging, and I've often wondered, like, what happens with that data? Like, what do they do with that? Like, there is so much data that comes from these wearable and trackable devices. There's so much data that comes from it. I'm glad that you brought up the television adverts, though, because since having moved to this side of the world, I've now been introduced to American commercials. And some of it, like, people are simply ignoring it, but because it's new to me, I'm paying really close attention to it.
Yes.
And I'll make up a name because, again, I don't want to get in trouble. But you'll be watching it, it'll be like, did you go to bed tired and wake up feeling tired? Use Wakium. And then it's like, and then there's somebody riding off on a beach on a horse, and you're like, this looks nice. And then the small print underneath this may cause blindness, death, or erectile dysfunction.
I know.
And I'm like, no, I'll wake up with coffee. Thank you.
It's so funny that like growing up, that was something my siblings and I would actually joke and laugh like crazy about. But like now, again, kind of understanding that because, a trial's not going to move forward unless the ethics committee approves it, because the ethics committee, their job is to protect the human. And pretty much what they do is they weigh the benefits to, the negatives and the positives, right? So pretty much it's like, do the benefits outweigh all the negative stuff that's going to happen? And if there are this many negative things, then apparently it was enough to weigh their opinion. Also, some of those things could be honestly almost like one-offs, like one person in the trial had this random thing and they have no choice but to disclose it. But yeah, those always crack me up too. I love it.
Some of them are crazy. Absolutely great. But I love that. Okay. So for anybody who's interested in listening to the show, obviously the places that they can engage in the content will be in the show notes below. But as far as anybody who'd be interested in joining you as a potential guest, what's the best way of getting in contact with you? How can people find out more about your work? Where should we?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. They can reach me in a couple different ways. LinkedIn, of course, you can find me there under my name, or my company, ICE Consulting. They can email me at podcast@iceconsultingllc.com. Yeah, that's honestly one of the going to be the best ways. My website, iceconsultingllc.com, is where they can find out more about my company. Cause like I said, I am a TMF consultant that works with sponsors. So they can reach me in multiple ways.
Great. I'm excited. We'll make sure that those links are in the comments below. So whatever you are engaging on, unless you're on radio, if you're listening to this on radio, tough. You just have to type it in because I can't figure out a way of giving you notes on radio. But if you're listening to this podcast on a television show, we'll make sure that it appears on the screen here now so that it's like, here's one we prepared earlier. So team have edited so you can get in contact there. Definitely get in contact with Suzanne. It's going to be a great show. Suzanne, I'm really excited to hear how this goes and watch the progress. I know that this is something that is very important to you. And I know that even from the guests who you already have lined up, I know how exciting it is for them and the people who want to come and join and talk about these things as well. So super excited, super pumped about that. If anybody does have any questions, the links are all there. Make sure you get in contact with Suzanne. Suzanne,
thank you.
I mean, I know you've been the guest of your own show here, but I want to hand it over for you for the final words. So, Heart of the Trial, we are going into your first series. Those 10 episodes will be released over the coming weeks and months. What is the number one thing that you want people to take away from that? Number one, as a guest, and then if there's something separate, as an audience. What's that number one thing that you would consider it a massive success if they went away thinking this?
I think as guests, if they walk away feeling like, wow, I've been heard and recognized and I can show my contribution. And as the audience, that they can say, there are really great people who care a lot behind the scenes who want to make our lives better. So I would consider it a success. So.
And that sounds incredibly successful and powerful to me. So, Suzanne, one last time, thank you so much for being a guest on your own show.
Thank you for hosting.
Next time you're in the hot seat, so you'll be having a very different conversation, but I'm excited to see how this goes. And once again, congratulations on your success and the success.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Phil. This brings us to the end of today's episode. I want to extend my sincere thanks to our guest for sharing their inspiring journey. If you'd like to connect with them, you can find their contact information in the show notes. I also want to express my gratitude to you for joining us on this exploration of the clinical research industry. I hope you found today's episode insightful. If so, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It truly helps us reach more listeners. If you have any feedback, questions, or comments about the show, feel free to email me at podcast@iceconsultingllc.com. Thank you once again, and I look forward to having you joining us on our next episode of Heart of the Trial.
Thank you for enjoying this content by Billionaires in Boxes. If you would like to be a guest or a host, be sure to get in contact with us at billionairesinboxes.com.